Hi everyone, it's Lauren Kinghorn again with Inspiring Mompreneurs, and I have an incredibly inspiring mompreneur with me today. Her name is Julianna Dawson, and she is the proud founding president and CEO of Whole Life Change LLC. Tell me more about your company, Julianna.
Hi, everyone. So I created Whole Life Change LLC because there was a specific thing that I wanted to do and to bring forth in terms of helping people from wherever they are kind of get where they want to go. So I always say that it's bridging the gap between the life that you have and the life that you want. So Whole Life Change was created to help me bring that vision forth.
Awesome. Amazing. And so you do that mostly with one-on-one coaching sessions with people, is that right?
Yeah, usually I work with people one-on-one, first to find out where they are. I take them through a process to figure out where they want to go, what they want to be, or what they want to do. Most of the time, it's a person who either wants to start their own business or improve the business that they already have. Sometimes it's a person that wants to write their first book or their next book. It really depends on what that first conversation leads us to. And then we come up with a strategy and figure out how to make one of those things that they choose actually happen.
And so how long would it normally take you to work with someone to get to a whole life change where they feel like they've turned everything around?
Well, it really varies. It depends on the person and what it is that they're after. So I've had people, for example, who I may be communicating with for the first hour or two, and they'll describe that they've already had such a shift in perspective, and they don't understand how they actually got there, but they're already where they wanted to be in terms of,
Wow.
how they wanted to change the way that they felt about their life, right? So even though this has happened many, many times, it's always still very surprising to me every time it happens, and happens so quickly, right? But if a person is looking for something that's more specific, for example, I've had people during the course of 24 sessions or something like that, they will get through the process of writing and publishing their first book. I always tell people we could lock ourselves in a hotel room and work for 2 days and get that done,
Wow.
or we could spread it out over the course of a couple of weeks or a couple of months, right? Or once a month for 2 years and get that done. So that's why I say it varies, but I've also had people who have wanted to change their careers from whatever it is that they're in to something totally different that might require going back to school for a degree. If it's a
Wow.
4-year degree that you're going after, then I may be with you for that period of time as you kind of navigate your way through that change. But that'll be a very different process. It's not like we're talking to each other every single day or anything like that for 4 years, but it really depends on what the person is after.
Yeah, so we hadn't really talked about who you serve.
Yeah, I kind of base that on my past self, right? Understanding how my past self felt when I was working in corporate America, the things that I wanted to do myself. And when I think about it, I think you have your full-time job at work, you're working 8+ hours a day. If you're a mom, right? But you still have these entrepreneurial tendencies or desires. You want to start a business or you want to do something else in addition. How do you fit that into your life and you're a parent at the same time? So I really want to help people who are in that place where they have that experience and expertise in a specific area that they're already working in, but they still have that desire for something else and something more. Maybe they don't have as much time to dedicate to executing the strategy and the plan and implementing it. So
Okay.
that's what I'm there for.
So they've got a full-time job and they're moms and they want to go and start a business as well. So are these normally people who
Exactly.
just want to have a side hustle, or do they want to have a business that's eventually going to grow to a big business?
It's usually someone who wants to have something that's going to grow. Usually it's not someone that's just looking for a side hustle. It may start off as something like that, but usually I'm working with people who want something long term.
So they're ready to make a shift away from working for someone else to working for them.
Sometimes that's the case, but sometimes, surprisingly, they end up so much happier in their job that it's really strange. Like the whole taking someone through this process, you could take someone through this process who is so unhappy with their job. And by the time you're done, they're so happy with their job that they want to stay with their job, but they also have this other thing, you know. So yeah, it's really funny how it works, right?
That sounds like the typical hero's journey, doesn't it?
I tell you, every time I see it happen, like I still end up in awe looking at the whole situation and saying, wow, this is really different from where we started. And I hear people come back and they're gushing about how much they love their job. And also they've written and published their book. And that, you know, I don't usually tell people about that before we start working together. It usually kind of evolves and it happens and they experience it. And then we can talk about it. But the great thing about it that I love is that it puts a person in a position to have choices. They can choose if they want to continue to work at their job. They can choose if they want to put more into the business that they're creating, or whatever else it is that they choose that they want to do next. That's the other thing that usually happens too. Because once we select something that they do and they realize that they can do it and they actually get it done, all of a sudden, everything opens up and they're talking about, I want to try this or I want to do that. And it's just like a totally changed person.
Amazing.
Just a totally changed from going from, I don't believe I can, to what am I going to choose that I'm going to do next?
So the name you came up with was perfect.
So that's why I came up with Whole Life Change. I made it an LLC for the business side of it, but it's really hard to, when people say, what do you do, to describe that? And it's different for each person. So I usually invite people in, come on and start an experience, and then they get it and we move from there.
And people coming because they're in like some kind of existential crisis or midlife crisis, or they have this longing to be more and do more and become more and leave a legacy. Is it those kind of people who are coming to you?
Yes, exactly. You've worked and developed an area of expertise over the years, right? You have a solid foundation with your job or whatever, or your business or whatever it is, but there is something more that you want that you haven't gone after or that you have not been able to get. That's the spot right there.
How do these people find you, Julianna? How do they know that you're there?
Well, before it was literally people that got to know me asking me for help. And that's how I started years ago, just helping people. And now I'm just starting to kind of go out to the public and say, I am available, you know, I'm fully available to help people and take people through this process that I've developed over the course of the last several years, just doing it with people and observing the different types of people that I encounter and how they take action. I've shared with you an assessment that I've developed
Yeah.
that really takes people through understanding where they are, which is a good basis from which to start.
Yes, I loved doing that. It's been so interesting because it went into the business side as well. It was fun to, look up my numbers again and see where I'm at. And it wasn't what I expected at all. So I would encourage anybody to do the assessment because it's not just about your personality and what you want to change. It's about where you're at right now. I loved it. And I love that you also have this business side. Here we are, inspiring mompreneurs. You're exactly the kind of coach any mom entrepreneur needs, especially when they are considering making the transition or considering starting their own business. And yeah, the book coaching, you're realizing nowadays that it's so important to differentiate yourself and build your authority. Not just by owning a business, but by writing the book and doing the motivational talks, maybe a TEDx talk. All of these things have become really important if you're going to really grow a business. So I know you do some motivational speaking and inspirational speaking as well. What is your favorite topic to speak on?
Usually what I do if I'm asked to come and speak with an audience is I'll inquire with the person who's asking me to do it to survey the audience, find out a little bit about what it is that they need. Sometimes it's a person who has a group of people and they know what the problem is, so they can very clearly articulate what they're after. But sometimes you need to get very specific information from the audience about where they are and what they need. So I love doing that process first before I even put pen to paper to think about what it is that I'm going to speak with them about, so that everything is customized for the group that I'm speaking to. I really don't like doing anything cookie cutter. As you may have noticed when you went through the assessment, anyone that goes through the assessment, it's very specific about you, and it's going to give you specific tips based on who you are and what your experiences are. So when speaking, I love to do that first. I have a series of books called Inspiring Words, Love's Journey, and Inspiring Words, Finding Yourself. So usually I'll get calls for doing inspirational speaking, but sometimes it's about helping a group of people get through a very specific challenge.
And it was very kind of you to allow me to include your poem in your written interview that we'll be publishing as well. So thank you for that. I would love it if you could read out one of your favorite poems. That one about your children was absolutely beautiful. Would you like to do that for us?
You want me to read that one? Yeah, I will. I think I'll do that one. That's on page 22. So I'll do that one just for time. Okay. All right, this poem is from my book called Inspiring Words, Finding Yourself. And it's called When My Babies Cry. When my babies cry, it's as if they left something inside me where the umbilical cord was attached. And those cells become so powerful that they overthrow all my senses. They stir me and make my stomach churn until I can taste it in my mouth, spurring me to action, coming to their immediate aid, but relentlessly preparing to be there, close by, so that when they cry, I'm there to soothe in the way that only I can. When my babies cry, I become brave. I gain supernatural strength. I become capable of doing things I never before knew I possessed the power to do. I grow when my babies cry, like a tree being fed with superfood, fast, strong, my leaves green and full of luster. When my babies cry, I cry and water the tree that is me with my own tears, stretching and growing more and more, reaching to heights that I had never before dreamed or even desired to reach. When my babies cry, I want more so I can give more, not just for them, but to the world, to make it a better place for them as they grow.
Oh, I'm so glad I asked you to read it. That is so beautiful.
So that poem is a poem that I wrote on my way to work, on the first day back to work after I had my twins.
Oh, that is
yes.
such a difficult day.
In about like 6 or 7 minutes. I remember very clearly I got on to the Metro North. I was living in Westchester and New Rochelle at the time. And I got on the train and my son was crying as I was leaving the house. And it was so hard. Any mom watching this can understand what I'm talking about. And I just wrote that as I was on my way to work that day. And I saved it and put it in that book. Yeah. There's nothing like that feeling, nothing that you can describe to accurately describe that feeling.
And what our viewers and listeners don't know yet, what you went through to have those twins. So do tell that story too, because it wasn't easy to become a mom.
Oh. No, it wasn't easy to become a mom at all. I always thought it was an easy process. You grow up and it's almost like you're told not to for so long. You think that it's an easy thing. And I had always said to myself that I would push it off and do it later after I have developed this career and after I have all of these things and I feel like I'm capable of taking care of my kids. And that's what I did. And my husband actually let me do it. So I pushed it off and I pushed it off. And then once we started to try, then it wasn't happening. And it literally took 6 years of trying. And I had all sorts of issues. I had a miscarriage, you name it, I'd probably been through it in terms of dealing with infertility. And when I went to the doctor, I remember really clearly, he was like, you need to come back. You have to make a decision, first of all, because you know, there's a 90% chance that your twins or your kids are not going to make it. And, you know, hearing that is, there's nothing that can describe what hearing that feels like. So when he added, okay, you can come back tomorrow morning at 5 and there's this emergency surgery that I can do that will give them a 50% chance.
Wow.
So of course I was there.
Yeah.
And what he didn't tell me was that after that I would have to be on bed rest until the kids were born, you know. And, you know, I was like, wow, like he gave really, really specific instructions, like laying on your back or your side, right? For 5 months.
That is so uncomfortable. Just, oh my goodness. No.
You cannot imagine what that's like. I couldn't even walk around a corner slowly before this process. I had to slow down to doing nothing. That was one of the hardest things that I've ever had to do. And you can sit up at a 45-degree angle to eat. You know, so by the time I had gotten through those 5 months, I couldn't even walk. I'd lost so much muscle mass that I had to relearn to walk.
Wow.
At the end. It was crazy, like
And you're
rolled
mom.
around in a wheelchair. And yes, of course, it was a
You're now
huge
mom of
success.
twins.
But
Yeah.
I always like to look at the silver lining in everything. And when I think back about that time in my life, and that's where I went through this whole process, I went through a life evaluation, looking at my life, where I was, what I had, you know, all of that stuff, and deciding, like, what is it that I want going forward? What is it that I'm going to choose for myself that I want? And that was the first time I really sat down and did that, because there was so much time available to me. And what I learned through that process was that if you don't stop and take a moment to think about those things, you can end up just doing things your whole life.
Yeah.
And not living for what you really and truly want. And that's why I really want to be able to help as many people through that process as possible. Nobody has to end up where I ended up in order to stop and think about their life and choose where they want to go next.
Yeah. Although it normally does take something. It maybe doesn't always have to be that extreme, but something happens. There's a catalyst before someone will really make a change, a life change like that. Yeah.
Yes.
And wow. And were they born premature as well at the end, and they had to go and incubate?
No, I took them. They were full term.
Full term twins.
Yeah.
Wow.
I took them.
Okay. How uncomfortable you must have been. Please tell me you
I wrote that first book during that time. I'd place the computer on my belly and I'd write. I did so many things during that time that were really valuable to me, but it was amazing to see them make it all the way full term.
And look at them now, 9 years old.
Now, like,
it was all worth it.
I tell them that story. I share with them that story just so that they know that we purposely made an effort to bring you into this world.
And they are survivors. I mean, they also had to work in there somehow to be where they are today.
Oh, yeah.
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 Amazing. Incredible. That's such a beautiful story. And then you also had another story you mentioned that was pretty radical. That happened when you were much younger, before you became a mom. That was also a catalyst in your life.
Yeah, when I was 14, I was walking home from school and I was attacked at knife point by a rapist. And I was very, very lucky. I was actually saved by a dog that barked so hard that he distracted this person enough to allow me to escape.
Someone else's dog, or a street dog?
Because he literally had dragged me at knife point backwards into this space. And I don't want to give too many graphic details. I don't want to trigger anyone that's watching this. So this is something that I have gone through therapy and all of that. So I'm healed. So as I talk about it, it's not triggering for me, but I don't want to trigger anyone else. But what I would say is that with that experience came things that I didn't expect as a 14-year-old, people pointing the finger on your way to school. Oh, that's her. They may not know the details, but like the stigma and all of the stuff that kind of goes along with it. And at the time, not being able to clearly say, oh, that's him, when they put all of these men in front of me, for me at that age to say, I am 100% sure that this person is the one. as they're contorting themselves or whatever it is, the maturity level that I just didn't have at that age to be able to do certain things. So I learned a lot from that experience, but it was the experience, as unfortunate as it was at that point. That's when my grandmother called my mom and said, you know, I really do need you to come and get her. That's how I came to the US, because after that, my mom, who had gone off to America to try to make a better life for us at the time, came back and got me. And, you know, I come out of that experience with so much insight about how these things could happen, empathy for people who end up doing stuff like that. Over the years, studying and going through therapy and having discussions, now at this age, having all of that wealth of knowledge with me, it's very different from back then. But I share that story because there are people who go through those type of experiences and they feel like they can't come out of them. And I want people to know that regardless of what experience you've gone through, we can find a way to help you to come out of that experience and have a much better life experience.
I can imagine you'd be amazing as a coach, having had that experience and worked through all of that. Just that already made you a coach because you've dealt with PTSD, you've dealt with trauma, and especially at a very young age. Wow.
Yes. And usually, like, if I encounter someone who has a situation like that, we will pull in an expert in a specific field for that person to help them with that specific thing.
Yeah.
And so it's not just me, it's putting together the right team that's able to help you with whatever it is that you need.
Right. Okay. That's amazing. And you have a very interesting career that we haven't really spoken about yet, working for Fortune magazine and Newsweek. So that also has, made you into who you are today. So can you give me a little bit of your background just for the listeners and viewers to get to know you better?
Oh, sure. Yeah, I count myself, very, very lucky, but I also believe that you create your luck. So while I was in college and I was working at some points 3 different jobs, and as I got to a point where I was about to graduate, I remember I went to the job wall and I applied for this job, and I had no idea where this job was going to be. It turned out to be for Fortune magazine.
Wow.
And yeah.
Lucky break.
And I remember at first it was a phone interview, and I felt like I really connected with this woman, Lee, who has been one of my greatest mentors in life.
Wow.
And she was amazing, meticulous. I get a lot of my meticulous nature from her. Wow. She also was inspiring because she was the first person that told me things like invest. I just was not thinking about investing.
Yeah.
When I was working at that, that young age, it was not something that I was thinking about. And I remember really clear, she was like, just do it. And I trusted her enough to just do it, even though I didn't quite understand it for 1K and those kinds of things. And that has served me well over the years. Now it's a little bit different. I do things differently, but that was key. But my experience working at Fortune magazine, she taught me how to first do my job, but then she also helped me to train someone to take my place so that I could rise into the next position. Amazing. Which is a beautiful thing, right? Yeah. That was wonderful. That was here in the US, but I ended up going to Newsweek International, and that was for Europe, Asia, Latin America. And I got to travel to Paris and Switzerland and Zurich and London and Hong Kong. Like, it was a totally different experience. What happened, I'd work on some problem that might be presented. Hey, we're not receiving business in this specific area or industry. Can you help? So I'd go in, I'd ask questions, I'd try to understand the situation, and we'd come up with an idea with the team to figure out what would work. And then usually I'd get the call saying, can you come and present it in whatever country it was? And I'd go with the team, and we'd go and we'd present. And I had one beautiful experience I really remember and loved was with private bankers in Switzerland, getting them to come in. And that was close to $1 million project within 60 days or so, just listening to what was needed and crafting a strategy and executing that over the first year and the second year. It ended up being a really nice project. But that experience helped me understand how to put projects together for Fortune 500 companies. So doing it for individuals is different, because sometimes you don't have those large budgets that you might have, but having that experience and knowing what's possible today with today's technology and with all of the changes that we've experienced in the world, right?
Yeah.
A lot of people are still operating as if we are still in the past, and they're not really utilizing everything that they could be utilizing to get where they want to go, because they're still operating by a lot of traditional mechanisms. And that's where that knowledge helps me to put that together with what's really available today and come up with some unique ways for just a regular person to develop themselves really in a way that prior to now you would consider only a Fortune 500 company might be able to do. So you know how they say now you got your iPhone, and that has the power that only presidents used to have years ago.
Wow.
It's the same thing with life. Yeah, the power that we have now.
And even in the book industry is completely different to what it was before. I know that you are working with a publisher, but hardly anybody works with publishers anymore because they're all self-publishing. Yeah,
I've done it both ways.
So you've done both. Yeah.
Yeah, I've self-published and I've worked with a publisher. But when it comes to writing your first book or writing your next book, in my opinion, what's important is your audience, right? That's another opportunity for more people to get to know you and for you to have that connection with them. It's all about you and the people that you're serving. And that just is one more tool that will help you to develop a good relationship with them.
Wonderful. And your message to the world then? I always love to ask this question.
You know, I always say you want to have awareness and you want to take action. You want to measure your results and you want to repeat. And you take yourself through that process over and over. And as you do that, as you're going through your life journey, as you do that, you'll find that you're rising and you're achieving.
Yeah.
And, you know, it's one goal after another, but you're also living in that space of being able to be happy with whatever it is that you have at the moment at the same time. That's important.
Yeah. That is beautifully said. And I think that's a great place to end, unless, of course, there's anything else you would like to say.
Well, I'd love to invite you guys to go to wholelifechange.com and feel free to take the assessment there. It will walk you through a process where you'll have the opportunity not just to learn about yourself and what type of a coaching student you might be, but I also include a ton of bonuses in there, like a free life evaluation that you can either take yourself through, or I can take you through myself, or have someone on the team do with you. So go check it out and reach out and let me know if there's anything that I can do for you.
Awesome. Thank you so much. It was really wonderful to chat to you today.
Awesome. Thanks, Lauren.
Yeah.
It really is a pleasure being here. I really appreciate you taking the time to have this chat with me.
Oh, absolute pleasure from my side.